Welcome to Our View with Lorrie Hull Smithers. Today we have a very special guest who is also a special friend of mine and colleague, Katie Laris. Katie is the co-chairman of the theater department at Santa Barbara City College and a most talented director. So welcome, Katie.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Well, thank you. You are a special friend.
Oh, I have so enjoyed getting to know you. I have mentioned to you many times that so many years ago, I found this book.
Oh, great.
And it wasn't to say that I just randomly came across it, but rather it is one of the preeminent books on acting. And so for years in the classroom, I would just use this book as a sort of companion. And how amazing was it to come to Santa Barbara and then meet you? And I had no idea, I think for a little while, that you were the author of this amazing book, Strasberg's Method, the preeminent book on Lee Strasberg.
Well, thank you. Probably you knew me as Smithers, my married name,
Right.
And the name of the author is S. Lorraine Hull, H-U-L-L, which
exactly.
is my professional name. And I wish we could see more of each other, but we both are so busy.
So busy.
I am busy. I sometimes give private lessons here in Santa Barbara, and sometimes if people are up for something like an audition that you have coming up for the heiress, they come to me for private acting lessons.
Yes.
And you're so busy directing and co-chair.
I am.
And we just have enjoyed seeing your plays so much. We were so impressed with Osage, you know.
Oh, thank you so much. It really thrills me no end to have you guys in the audience.
And then also we were pleased with the last one you did, Arsenic in Old Lace, because the director of this TV station, Matt Schuster, also had a role.
He was wonderful.
He was great.
It was so great to have him on stage, and he, took a small role of an officer brophy and really grew into it, right?
Yes.
And I mean, I thought one thing we could talk about today is how does an actor go from just words on a page to creating a role that is believable, that is on pace, that is in the right style, that is in the right period? Like, what are the steps to really go there?
I'm just delighted to talk about that.
Yes, yes.
Because it's chapter 8, I think, in my book, Preparing and Learning the Role.
Yes,
where
yes.
an actor asks himself or herself questions.
Yes.
That, they
will
answer.
Guide their creation.
One thing is research.
Yes.
And I have a whole group of questions that they ask themselves. Who am I? Where am I? What is my emotional state? What is my relationship to the other people? What is the era? What research do I have to do?
Yes.
And I know you probably have your acting students and people you direct do other kinds of research too.
I do, but I mean, I think you're right. As a great baseline, as you begin, that kind of primary research is so important, right? But it's the things that guide an acting performance are so many.
Right.
People don't, coming to an audience, if they don't have the experience you do, they have no idea what is required, right? So it's like an intellectual aspect, which is all that research, an emotional aspect, a physical aspect, and there are just an endless amount of steps that you can go to.
We also like to have our students write a biography or backstory and give it to the class, and then the class will ask questions of the character.
Great. Great.
Now, I'm going to tell a story about Elia Kazan, the director. When my daughter acted for him in the arrangement, he asked her to do a biography of the character.
Wow.
And he told her the story of how Marlon Brando asked him to write a biography for Brando's character, probably in A Streetcar Named Desire. I don't remember which one it was. And so Brando wrote pages and pages that he turned into Kazan. And then my daughter Diane wrote pages and pages. And was going to turn it into Kazan, and he said, "Oh, you don't need to. That's for your own use."
Oh, well, but she had done the work for herself, right? Yeah.
But we like to have our students actually give the biography as the character.
Exactly.
And, you know, we have many different acting techniques.
Yes.
Like one is speaking out a narrative monologue. She explained in my book too, where they speak out the thoughts as a character.
Exactly, and we talk about that in class as well, like a stream of consciousness monologue. So that you're going through here I am, and I don't know exactly where I'm going right now, but all around me are these sights and sounds and all that kind of thing of getting into the character's mind. Right?
And we identify an inner monologue, which is the actor's thoughts, and then a narrative monologue, which is the character's thoughts.
Right.
And we like to have them think as character and feel as the character.
Exactly. I mean, that whole process of how do you inhabit the role.
Right.
Really grow into it.
And that was one of the things when I went backstage after seeing your show that I complimented Matt about.
Yes.
I said, I really thought you were thinking and feeling as the character.
Yes.
And of course, so many of your other actors were too.
Absolutely. But
Matt
really did that. And it was wonderful to see, you know, how he took it from the just sort of words on a page, right? You're just saying the words, and then how do you get more and more detailed? And how do you sort of live that life from the moment you walk on stage that you're really sort of in tune with the character?
And another thing is creating the place.
Yes.
I mean, they aren't acting in thin air.
Right, right.
If they're at a park, well, hopefully they'll create a park they know.
Exactly.
I remember directing the Zoo Story, and Henry Fonda was a judge of that.
Wow.
It was a national competition.
Wow.
And he said, I thought I was in the park with those actors.
Wow, that's so great.
You know, we want that.
Yeah, exactly. And just even the specificity of how are you dealing with your costume?
Yes.
How are you dealing with your prop pieces? And, you know, Matt in Arsenic and Old Lace had a lot of props that he was dealing with.
He was a policeman.
Yeah, he had the police officer kind of uniform to deal with. And just how do you make that real? It can't be an alien thing. It's got to be very much in your own kind of habit.
And some people research, I remember my daughter did this once by going around with the police.
Yeah.
In New York City, she did that once for a role, traveling with them in the car.
Yeah.
And actually going to, you know, the actual places if it's possible.
Yeah. Well, I did have, I asked a friend of ours, Officer Adrian Gutierrez from the Santa Barbara Police Department.
Good for you.
And he came in and he observed the police and he talked to them about, you know, you got to hitch up your tool belt.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you have to stand in this way, or you need to sort of carry authority with your voice. And he was very helpful.
Well, I think you're a fine director, and you must be a good acting teacher too. What are your classes at SBCC?
So we have a couple
that you teach.
Oh, okay. So well, I teach a beginning acting class, I teach an intermediate acting class, I teach advanced acting.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And we do...
I did that as a college professor, too.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was also going to say we do a voice and diction class, and we also do acting for the camera. The beginning class is a real overview of acting. So you learn the vocabulary. You learn when a director says, go upstage left, that you're going to go away from the audience and towards your own left.
Basic tools.
Basic tools. You learn, you deliver a monologue. You learn what are the skills it takes to just carry a monologue. You also perform a scene with another actor and all the skills, including blocking and use of props, use of costumes, to really embody a scene. And we really work to get actors, give them the tools to affect an audience. And we sort of talk about, like, what is it that affects an audience? And a lot of it is, as you've said, that really believable integration of yourself with the character.
Thoughts and feelings of the character.
Exactly. And then those very basic things, which are listening and responding. You know, can you really listen? Can you really respond?
Oh, that's so important.
So important.
Shelley Winters has sent me several goddaughters, and I probably have told this story before.
No, I don't, not
One
to me.
of the goddaughters came back from my class, and Shelley said, well, what did you learn from Lorrie today?
Yeah.
And the girl said, I learned that good acting was good listening.
That's so
And
important.
I've told that story many times in classes.
It's so important, and yet again, I think people don't realize how important really listening is. Listening like you've never heard it, listening like it's really important.
Well, all good acting is if it's happening for the first time.
Exactly.
That's why we also do a lot of improvisation.
Yes, and I love that too.
I do too. I like to go back and forth between the lines and improvisation. And this is in learning the role too, and advice to actors, until they finally have learned it.
Yes.
Because in the shows I've directed, I have not allowed a prompter.
Oh,
because we work
right.
this way, and they know they can improvise.
Yes.
And get back on track and get themselves out of it.
Absolutely, and you make them get themselves out of it.
Right.
Right.
And the audience never knows the difference.
Absolutely, and they should always know what's supposed to happen, so they should be able to improv it.
And if they can't, well, usually someone else in the scene can to
Yes.
help them get back on track,
and
because they have rehearsed this way, you know,
Yes.
back and forth.
In my class, in one of my classes, my intermediate class, we do look at Streetcar Named Desire.
Oh, that's a wonderful
Of course,
play.
it's such a wonderful,
Yes.
amazing, complex play. And at the very beginning of the process, the actors read through the scene, and then they actually go completely off book and they improvise what actually happens. What are
Very
the
good.
events that happen in the scene?
That's the way I like to work.
I
too.
love too,
No.
and they really have to understand what's going on, right?
Right. Speaking of Streetcar, I'll tell you another Kazan story.
Yes.
When my daughter acted for him, she first on the stage. I mean, first in the film, the arrangement with Kirk Douglas, and then
Wow.
on stage, he wrote a role for her. But I like to pick his brains, and a
Yeah.
lot of my directing chapter is Kazan.
Right.
And one of the things he told us was he just loves to get his actors to really, really want their inner action
Yes.
or intention
Yes,
or
that's
objective.
Great. That's
and he
great.
said for his two Blanches, Jessica Tandy on Broadway
Right.
and
Vivian
Lee
Lee.
in the movie,
Yeah.
he got them to really, really want a refuge from the world.
Yes. Yes.
And
yes.
that was one of his directing
Making that
techniques.
primal and everything so really
Yes.
a matter of life and death.
Yes.
And certainly.
And it was for Blanche.
Yes. Oh, truly.
And Stanley was her obstacle and got rid of her, you know.
Yes.
Yes.
I had a debate one time with a friend who absolutely insisted the play is Stanley's play. And I said, it's not Stanley's play. This is Blanche's play. Yes, he is her central antagonist, but I think that Marlon Brando was so compelling in that
So
movie,
overpowering.
and people just remember Marlon Brando. But really, it's her. She's the one who's changed so profoundly, but over the course of the play.
Oh,
So,
yes.
and such a beautiful play.
It really is. It's one of my favorites, too.
Absolutely.
Now, let's talk a little bit about you. You were going to direct the Eras, but you
was.
decided not to because you're helping your son
Yes.
apply to colleges.
Yes, yes. So I have now been working and directing at City College for just a little bit over 10 years.
Oh, that's
And
a long time to be direct.
It is, and because of the way we work in the evenings, and we rehearse almost every single night, about 4 hours a night.
I've been there in my past.
Yes. So I have two children who have grown up over these 10 years, and my oldest just turned 17, like a couple days ago. And he's going into his final year of high school. And the senior year now is really fraught with some anxiety because he has all these tests he's still wrapping up, and he has a lot of college applications. And I just felt, I love the Heiress. I was very excited to direct the Heiress. But as I realized I'll never have a senior year of my oldest son ever again, I really felt like I need to be there for him in the evenings.
I felt the same way for my children. And I didn't start teaching at the college level until they both had left home.
Wow, wow. So,
But I was a drama coordinator for a school system.
yes,
Yeah.
a lot of work. In
A
any
lot of
event.
work,
Yes.
right.
So I've actually passed on the responsibility and pleasure to my dear friend and colleague Maggie McSell, who is the artistic director of Speaking of Stories
I
in
know,
town.
yes,
And she's lovely, and she's a wonderful director, and she'll be more than up to the task, and I get to help. So we're about to go into casting, and as you and I have always said, casting is so essential, if not everything. Perhaps it's everything.
Maybe it's 95%.
95%. So we are right now on a search for the right Catherine to really be at the center of this play. It's a very, very complicated role. It was recently, The Heiress has been performed on Broadway a number of times.
I remember Olivia de Havilland in the movie.
She was in the movie.
And who played the part on
Well,
Broadway?
a very memorable performance was Cherry Jones. A number of years ago, about 15 years ago, Cherry Jones was Catherine. And she just got phenomenal reviews. I saw the play. She was wonderful in it. Recently, Jessica Chastain, a Hollywood film actress, played
yes,
it.
she was so good in The Help.
Yes,
I
yes.
remember.
So that performance did not get the same level of review. She was, I think, going up against the Cherry Jones still reputation, and it's a very, very challenging part because that character has to go through so many emotional sort of changes of sadness and anger and love, passionate love and betrayal and many different complicated moments in the play.
Well, and when you direct or other people direct for Santa Barbara City College, you open it to the community,
We
right?
do. It's
like a
totally
community theater.
It is.
And I remember when we first moved here, we went to the Laramie Project.
Yes, yes.
And just blown away. It was such a wonderful show. And then we've seen what you've directed, and, you really do fine work at SBCC.
Well, we have wonderful local Santa Barbara actors who come out often after they've worked a full day, and they come out and rehearse, and it really is a family, and it really is an intentional community of people who are donating their time for the love of theater. We do occasionally bring in guest artists. As you said, you talked about August Osage County. We were lucky enough to have a woman who had been on Broadway playing the role 60 times to anchor it.
And the local actors held their own. They were just as fine
They
as
were
she
so
was.
great.
Yes.
They did an amazing job.
I was so moved by that play.
Oh, I really enjoyed working on it. Wonderful script, wonderful actors.
And Let's, I noticed, is acting as well as writing, the playwright. And his mother is a famous novelist who just died recently.
Yes, I know. I know. I just came
wonderful
across
background there.
a book of hers, actually, that I didn't even know I had, actually.
Oh, really?
But
I'd like to borrow it sometime.
yes, I have to get it to you, actually.
Now, tell the dates that the Heiress will be on, because I think this will show before and also while it's playing, before it opens and while it's playing.
All right. Well, I am going to be quoted on this, but I believe we open October 15th. We open around about the middle of October, and we play until November 2nd. It's a 3-week run, and it's at the Garvin Theater. The box office is 965-5935, or you can go online. And it really should be a wonderful show, a moving show that's based on the novel Washington Square by Henry James. And it really is a dynamic show of a portrait of a woman with intense fortitude despite her challenges.
A little depressing, but that's all right. It still moves.
Right.
It moves one.
It does. It does. And it's, the heart of that character is what is going to have to really touch the audience.
Now, are you going to be traveling? Like you said, your son might be applying to
Yes.
Georgetown and American. Are you going to be traveling there?
Around with him, I certainly hope to.
I did that with my daughter, and
Did
it's
you?
a wonderful thing to do, I think.
Oh, yes, yes.
I remember going to Stanford
Wow.
and being disappointed in their play.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
You know,
What did you see there? Do you remember?
I don't even remember. And then she applied too in the East and also at UCLA. And then when Kazan cast her in his movie, there was no doubt UCLA
Yes, yes.
was the choice. But as I told you, we lived in Wisconsin at the time.
Wow, wow.
And the tuition was about the same at Stanford and UCLA.
Wow,
She,
yeah.
You know, if she
As an out-of-state.
she could have gone to either place.
Huh. And did she have a good experience? Well, you'll have to ask her when she's next on your show.
I don't think she wants to be.
Well,
I'm pleased she helps me in other ways.
yes. Well, it's very...
One of the joys of having children, Katie.
It is, it
You help
is.
them, they help you.
Yes, and I must say I've had so many friends in the theater business who wanted to have children, hoped to have children, expected to have children, and didn't get to have children because it's a tough life.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It's a life that you often have to travel. You have to be in one place for 6 or 8 weeks. Or
That's what Katharine Hepburn
Right.
thought. That's why she didn't have children.
That's
Yeah.
true, and it's very, very demanding. But I've always felt so grateful that I was able to have my 2 beautiful boys and a career in theater.
That's
So
terrific.
It is possible to do it, but there's some balancing involved, and I guess that was part of my decision too. I've
Right.
had to just say, this one's going to have to go to my sons.
Well, I was lucky. Both of mine were also interested in the theater.
Nice.
Even though my son became a composer and
Yes.
didn't act. But
Yeah.
I was lucky that we did a lot together
Yes,
in
that's
the
wonderful.
theater. And my daughter was in Hollywood before I was.
Yeah, that's incredible. I know.
I was living vicariously. I was still a professor in the Midwest before Lee Strasberg asked me to teach for him
Wow.
in Hollywood.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit how that all came about.
Well, I was very active in regional and national theater groups. And we would bring Lee Strasberg to Wisconsin, where I was president of the group, to do workshops, week and 2-week workshops, similar to what my husband and I and my daughter and I have done
Now.
yes. And then my daughter and I studied with Lee in New York.
Wow.
He accepted her as the youngest person in his class.
Wow.
And then she studied with him and went to the Actors Studio in LA. And people called Kazan and told him about her.
Incredible.
And he called and cast her.
Yes.
It was really a fairy tale story. And I was still back a college professor in Wisconsin.
Yes.
But when Lee then asked me to come to Hollywood and teach for him,
Yeah.
I jumped at it.
Oh, yeah.
My marriage was on the rocks anyway. And I taught for Lee for 12 years.
Wow.
As his senior faculty member.
Now, was he, I remember his amazing performance in The Godfather,
Oh, yes,
right?
yes.
And did that happen around that same time?
It was a little bit before because
Okay.
Al Pacino, who is a friend of
Yes.
ours too, and studied with Lee, encouraged, was it Coppola?
Yeah,
To
Coppola,
cast
right.
him in The Godfather.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was about the only acting he did except years ago when he was young.
Yeah.
Now we have about 4 minutes left.
Oh, my goodness.
Is there anything you particularly want to tell or talk about?
Well, I think I'd love actually to hear you talk a little bit more about what you at this point, as you look back over your whole career span, what are the things that have made you love acting and theater? What are the words of inspiration that I can pass on to my students as I start teaching in just a couple days from now?
Well, it's just a wonderful feeling, particularly theater, where you feel an audience with you. And then when I taught for Lee, and he asked me to teach Understanding of the Method, which was one of the courses.
Right.
And then I realized people were all different attitudes about the method.
Yeah.
And there's so much misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So it was a passion of mine to change my Ph.D. dissertation, Strasberg's method, into a book.
Wow.
A passion to change it
Interesting.
into a book, because people at the Actors Studio were arguing, and even now some of them, I can say this, are a little off base.
Yeah.
My daughter, my husband, myself, we
Yeah.
know what we're doing.
Yeah.
But it was a passion then to write the book.
Yes.
And then after the book came out, then my husband and I decided, why not do some DVDs?
Yes.
And so we did 2 DVDs, 2-hour DVDs,
Yeah.
based on the book.
Yeah.
And I claim to be the authority because I let Lee read, when he was still alive, the dissertation.
Wow.
When it was,
Yeah.
before I
Yeah,
changed
yeah,
it to
yeah.
try to make it more interesting for the average person.
Wow.
And he approved. He said, this is correct.
Great.
And
Great.
also, when I was teaching for him, I sat beside him with a microphone and taped everything he said, so I can
Wonderful.
back everything up.
Yeah.
So thank you for turning the interview into me.
Well, I mean, I think, I don't know whether your average person realizes, but when I was starting to teach at City College, I called many friends who were teaching all over the country. Friends at Yale School of Drama, friends at, in Denver, in Washington, and I said, what are you, at the preeminent schools, what are you teaching your actors? And they all said, the method.
I
still the
taught
case.
workshops at Yale.
Yeah, yeah. It's still.
I was invited
I
there
mean,
2 times to teach workshops.
and
Yeah.
there are different approaches to the method, as you say. Strasberg, of course, we know Strasberg is one. Stella Adler, even Meisner, Bobby Lewis. They all came out of the group theater
That's right.
that your daughter was part of.
No,
and,
no.
Or the new version of the group theater.
No,
or
she was in the Actors Studio.
Oh, the Actors
with my
Studio,
husband. The group
right.
theater.
a little earlier.
Yeah, Lee
Yeah,
taught
yeah.
acting there
Right.
to all these other people.
Right.
And it wasn't that much difference.
Right.
I
right.
mean, everyone can do their own thing, but it's all based on Stanislavski.
Exactly, and it's just
Yeah.
interesting to know that even after so many years, after these practitioners are still passing on the words of Stanislavski.
Yeah, and Diane and I were able to teach at a Stanislavski conference in Paris,
Wow.
where we met his daughter
Wow.
and head of the Moscow Art Theater, and they had my book.
Amazing. That's
So-
really an incredible honor, Lorrie.
Thank you for interviewing me,
Yes.
too. I really intended to just interview you. I think our time is almost up.
Okay, well, it's certainly always a pleasure to be talking to you,
Right.
and we'll have to find time to do it off camera as well.
I know. We got lost one time together. We were talking so much. When
I
we went to
remember that.
Carrie's farewell party.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, great. So
I think it's over.
perfect.